Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about conjunctival and corneal sampling, maybe a little bit more about keratitis because that's what I look at very, very often, and also biopsy pathology in various conjunctival lesions, and a few videos on how to follow certain techniques. So just to acknowledge that all the microbiology slides and videos that I'm going to show are shared to me by our microbiology colleagues at my institute, Dr. Saviti Sharma and Dr. Jovita Joseph. And all the histopathology slides are and the videos from Dr. Dilip Mishra and Professor Geeta K. Vemuganti, who are ophthalmic pathologists. So what are the indications for conjunctival samples? So very often we come across conjunctival lesions, but just pushing across the indications would also mean that if we want to, it used to be one of the ways to diagnose a case of limbal stem cell deficiency, either when we take a biopsy. For example, this clinical picture here shows a large area of conjunctival overgrowth or pannus. And when you excise this, this is what you see, that on the cornea, there is a huge conjunctival overgrowth, which is hypertrophic, and a few goblet cells at the base. And this is what you get in the biopsy. But you can also take imprints or impression cytology from this area. And in the earlier days of when we were recognizing limbal stem cell deficiency, we used to have a criteria of having impression cytology features, which would show squamous kind of cells on the imprint and also some goblet cells on the corneal surface. So that's how we would diagnose a case of limbal stem cell deficiency. The other indications, of course, are when you see subtle conjunctival lesions, and this could be in inflammatory conditions. For example, in some cases where the only lesion you have for sarcoidosis is conjunctival granulomas, you can excise that. Or it could be a lot of potpourri of lesions. So this picture that you see is actually a very, not very, very uncommon, but what you would see sometimes is a eye worm. And this, don't have the video, but you can actually see that it moves subconjunctivally. And this kind of lesion you need to take out. You also would have multiple causes for excision biopsy, whether it's rhinosporidiosis or ophthalmia nodosa, or sometimes even caterpillar hairs, which go and lodge into the subconjunctival area, causing granulomas. You have other causes of granuloma due to cotton fibers or synthetic fibers, allergic response, and those that happen after the death of the parasite. So that's Sprender-Heppley phenomenon. So coming to a few of these conditions, this is a patient with rhinosporidiosis. And this is an unusual case of a patient who had cotton that had lodged over here into the conjunctiva. And when we excise that, what you can see is all the cotton bundles of cotton, or what the fibers that were visible. This was another farmer who gave a history of some trauma. So what he had was a sort of a pseudopterygium kind of lesion. And initially, this was thought to be maybe some kind of malignancy. But when we excised it, what we could see was multiple septate filaments, which was nothing but a ball of fungus. This is yet another patient who was initially diagnosed as nodular scleritis and was also started on steroids, but the patient did not improve, except for some amount of improvement. It did not go away. And excision biopsy was done, and what it showed was the skeleton of a worm. And yet another, although this is a rare case of a young patient who had this mulberry-like growth coming out from his upper conjunctival region. And this is very typical, this bleeds on touch, this papilloma. This is very typical of conjunctival amyloidosis, and that's what you could see on histopathology. So in conjunctiva, many of the times, either the diagnosis can be very simple, clinical, or when we have certain mass lesions, we need to excise them, and histopathology is the way to go for the final conclusive diagnosis. This is another patient who has a sort of a smoothened out lid margin, had chronic symptoms of chronic kind of a conjunctivitis, red eye, irritable eye, one eye more than the other for several years. And you can just about see that the fornicel foreshortening is happening. In another patient, you can see a very obvious foreshortening and symblephron and the formation of folds when you try to retract the lower lid. So this is nothing but a case of OCP. What happens to the sample is that we should take a conjunctival biopsy from the area, and immediately that particular sample is placed on OCT or optimal medium, which is a medium to be used. And this medium, the tissue is laid out flat in that medium. And this is liquid nitrous, in which we immediately freeze the tissue. The tissue is frozen in that. And from the operating room, the same casket is taken up to the pathology lab. It will freeze very fast in the optimal compound, which is required for freezing it. And then that specimen with the OCT medium is placed on the cutter, and then slowly the sections are taken. And then finally, these sections are mounted on the cover slide, and we can immediately examine this under microscope after staining for immunofluorescence. So with immunofluorescence, what you get is a representative picture, but we would see very bright staining at the edge of the basal membrane complex, and this kind of staining, and especially when you use stains for IgG, IgM, C3 and complement, these would be very specific. They would be all highlighted in cases of ocular cicatricial pemphigoid, and that's how you can diagnose it. However, only about 40% patients actually show this positive feature because there are many limitations. The sample should be taken during time of disease activity, and also you should have a very good lab to do that. So there are some limitations. So predominantly OCP diagnosis is still clinical, but you can have lab-based diagnosis to sort of have very concrete proof that this is a case of OCT. So very quickly, I'll run through some, because I'm sure I'll be running out of time, some corneal samples. Indications are multiple, and the rarer indications would be if you have an ocular surface OSSN. I'm not going to cover tumors in here. I'm going to mainly cover keratitis, but these are some examples of ocular surface OSSN, which sometimes can be missed initially. So why do we need to scrape in macroblear keratitis? What is the need? You can already make a clinical diagnosis. But the answer to that is that the need for scraping is that we need to establish the diagnosis so that we know whether it's bacterial, whether it is fungal or parasitic, and even fungal-like filaments can sometimes be pythium. So we really need to know that. And because clinical diagnosis alone is not enough, we can only make out around 65% of cases when we diagnose them clinically. So I'll quickly go through how to do the scraping. So the idea is after topical anesthesia, we need to very carefully, we can do this on the slit lamp also, scrape from the active edges of the lesion. And most of the time the patients can cooperate very well, but we always keep our code blue kit ready and on standby. And for KOH, we just simply put it on the slide. And then we take some more slides for grams and sometimes DIMSA, and if you have suspicion for acid fast. The first medium we inoculate is usually chocolate agar, followed by blood agar, and a couple of liquid media, as well as if we're suspecting acanthamoeba, the non-nutrient agar. This is how it goes. And this is what we would see in KOH, simple KOH stain, where we can pick up a lot of information, such as fungus and even pythium, as in this case, microsporidia, as well as pythium. So coming to the last part of this is, it's actually very simple. Even anybody in a small setup can do the gram staining for the patients. So we just have to use a very simple technique of gram staining, in which we can pick up basically whether it's gram positive or gram negative, to pick up whether the bacteria and whether it's gram positive or gram negative. And this will help us to treat the patient subsequently by starting the therapy. So I will skip this video in the interest of time. And apart from gram positive or gram staining, the other stain that we also use often in the lab is acid fast staining to pick up nocardia or actinomycetes or mycobacterium. So that's all I had. Thank you.